thank you, Zach, and thanks for everybody for coming out. I really appreciate the entire clan of Matt Formans that we have in the audience today.
Oh, you're
Always
welcome.
nice.
You're
Always
welcome.
nice to see the triples out in full force. I've just got the REM5 thought recording over there, so we'll be able to get this up afterwards to share out with everybody. Like I said, I'm Brian, and this is Amir. We're both at REM5 out in St. Louis Park, and today we've got a couple things we wanted to chat about. I think after last month's overview of a lot of the metaverses that are out there, we were excited to WebXR and get to kind of chat and show off a few things that we've been using with this program in particular, and touch a little bit on kind of how COVID's affected our entertainment business and kind of what we've been doing in that space. And then we'll finish up with a little bit of the arena scale, which I think a few of you, Marty, you were at the beta night, and then we've been rolling that out that it's a untethered 4-person Quest experience in our facility, which has been pretty cool too. So I'm Brian. So I am the marketing manager here at REM5. I've been on the team since October. So yeah, a lot of interesting stuff has happened since then. I work a lot with kind of our partnerships, different events that we do, and then also am working with like our artist team, our extended reality artists.
Yeah, my name is Amir. I basically am here for emotional support for Brian, who needs a lot of it, and the janitor at REM5. No, I started REM5 with my buddy Travis Hoyam. We probably started on the project in 2016, and then opened our facility almost 2 years ago now. So it's been quite a journey. And as we'll talk about here in a little bit, our business is kind of bifurcated into two pieces. One is entertainment. So we have beer, pizza, and VR on nights and weekends. And then the other piece of our business is loosely using VR for good, where we spend a lot of time working with K-12 educators. We're doing a lot of cultural competence and emotional intelligence education, and a variety of other projects outside of the entertainment arena, and that's where I spend most of my time.
And of course, I always got ahead of myself and went through the overview already, but I guess I would say too, we can do a lot of like Q&A at the end. I think especially for our desktop users, like that the chat bar has been really effective. So feel free to like raise a virtual hand or pop into the chat bar, and we can kind of answer stuff as we go. It'll be pretty casual here tonight. But yeah, Amir just gave a really good overview. Who all has been out to our space in St. Louis Park? Decent number of you. If not, of course, yeah, Matt has. We'd love to have you guys out. Basically, like Amir said, beer and pizza get people in the door, and then we get to a lot of different ways to get to kind of explore the good we can do with it, and how entertainment can kind of pay the bills to do fun stuff like this and explore a lot of the new avenues. Consulting and studio business. So we have had a couple REM5 branded VR experiences that we've made in-house, and then also for consulting too, just having those conversations with companies, and of course that has been just exponentially speeding up with COVID. So kind of get on board and get with VR and actually a lot of the other pieces of tech that have come out of that. So video about our space.
I'm not hearing sound on that. Do you guys hear it?
Nope. Nope. I'm not getting it either.
Mine just says stream offline. Is it supposed to say stream offline?
Oh.
No.
We lost the screen. Is anyone else seeing stream offline, or are they just seeing the screen?
Video, yeah.
Well, you can still see the video and it's text at least.
Yeah. It's a good call, Ryan. That's exactly what it is.
And here I am that it's way too loud that I can't hear what anyone else is saying. So that's interesting. Yes, there was some awesome royalty-free music behind that, and that's why I was get my hands up in the air. Yeah, really the core here is that we know that VR is going to be the next stage beyond mobile, and it's really going to change everything that we do between work, learning, playing, and socializing. So yeah, like Amir will talk about too, a lot of our work is just evangelizing the technology, and I mean, clearly everybody in this room is super familiar with VR, but we work with 99.9% of people who have never put a headset on. So kind of those challenges and experiences of kind of more of the UX and getting people up to speed with even anything from entertainment to 360 video and everything in between. So yeah, I think we have a lot of as far as having this consumer facing space out in St. Louis Park, get a lot of an insight with that, and we'll kind of talk through some of that more today as well. Goes over to the second half too that Amir talked about, and that'll drive us really into the WebXR conversation for today. Is that yeah, the second half of REM5 is the REM5 for good, with a lot of the major verticals there being kind of corporate training for diversity and inclusion efforts, and then a lot of K-12 education, which will unfortunately have a big push coming up in the next 2 semesters. So here's just a couple of photos. There's Amir at a conference, and then we had camps this summer. So getting kids excited about VR and creating in VR is really big for us, and has been a really nice kind of pipeline to see them get excited about the technology. And then even just this past fall, we hosted an International VR Day where we focused on climate change. So to really separate the business from, hey, I want to oh, sorry, Mike. Hey, if you're still seeing that there is not a presentation on screen, just try refreshing and coming back in, and that should fix things. So give that a whirl. But yeah, thanks for the heads up. That's where it's kind of been like, hey, I want to come in and I want to play Beat Saber and I want to eat pizza. Like, that's great. We excel in that. But if it's like, I want to use VR to change the world and get people to think differently about a range of subjects, like, that's what we've been really diving deep in with REM5 for Good, especially over the last couple of months. But that's been something from the start of REM5 that's existed.
And really, Brian, just to add on that too. I mean, back a couple slides ago, in terms of how we believe that VR is the next computing platform, presumably everybody in this virtual space is drinking the Kool-Aid just like we are. But as we looked at the industry, we just saw this big gap between users of VR or potential users of VR and creators of VR, and so that's really what we set out to do is fill that gap. And back, I don't know what, 2017-ish, you started to see location-based entertainment pop up, VR arcades pop up all around the country, all around the world. But we saw them missing this other big piece of the market, kind of the other 99% of the use cases for VR outside of entertainment. So when we built out our space, for those that have been here, you'll notice it doesn't really feel like an arcade. We can transform it into a space where in the morning we're working with law enforcement, in the afternoon we're doing camp with a bunch of 8th graders, and then at night we're hosting a corporate event and drinking beer and having fun, and we can kind of do that all under the same roof.
Yep, yeah, and that's just kind of touching back on those sections that we've been really exploring. I mean, there's really untapped markets, and we've basically played in all of these spaces, from law enforcement training to working with senior groups. We actually have had a story go viral multiple times on different platforms about a 93-year-old woman who came in to do Google Earth VR and revisit her childhood and talk about how she had difficulties, you know, with her eyesight, and just kind of the colors and the immersiveness of VR changed it. So it's really cool when those kind of stories come out outside of shooter game. I mean, yeah, we all enjoy that, but yeah, this is kind of that other side of it. Whoops. And then, yeah, as far as getting kids into design programs where, hey, you can use the same programs that Ford and Bugatti are using to prototype car models, and you're a 7-year-old who lives in St. Louis Park, like, that's pretty cool. And I always think about, like, man, if I was a kid growing up right now and having kind of access to this stuff, like, it would be exciting. So we're hoping that these kids also are getting excited about that too. And then, yeah, sensory-friendly sports training. If you visit rem5forgood.com, small plug, you can kind of read more and see a lot about what we're doing. With that, a little bit of a background of how we are, going to market in a lot of different ways and interacting with people. We wanted to touch a little bit just on how kind of COVID has affected us. Clearly, I would say that there's probably hasn't had some effect on their day-to-day or their business, especially due to COVID. So reopened back in mid-June at our St. Louis Park facility. During March and June, we did explore a lot of at-home rentals. We had a lot of our youth for education, where you could take a go home, an Oculus Go home, and we had all this course material. And so you'd go and you'd do a couple experiences on the go, and then you would fill out kind of some homework, I guess, about it. And so that was pretty cool. So time to really explore these other avenues, and that's of course kind of where WebXR came from as well. But entertainment space has gone. I mean, there's been a lot of mandates from the state and just kind of the CDC giving out general guidance that, of course, if you've been in a public space in the last 6 weeks, you have seen that. And yeah, just kind of making sure that, we're doing our part. Since day one, I mean, the hygiene behind headset sharing has been very important to us, of course. So this is just, this is nothing new for us, but it does represent some challenges, as you could imagine. So it's just a little video on some of the stuff that we've done internally on that.
Yeah, the clean box was probably the only material addition to what we have done really since we opened.
So yeah, just kind of a quick overview for, like, I mean, I know as you kind of all maybe have your own personal headsets at home, but when we're putting, hundreds of people into headsets a week, it's something to be concerned about. I know it sounded like the clean box. Yes, the hands-free door openers are nice. I mean, I think what we're learning is that a lot of that type of stuff should have been implemented years ago, but now we're all like, all right, I'm never gonna have to touch a bathroom door handle ever again. So victory to that. But I know there was some interest in the clean box. So the clean box was a pretty expensive purchase that we basically got it back in house, mid-May, to start doing some testing with it. And how we've approached that is that, and actually, we have Guer joining us. Guer, the REM5 robot in the middle. He's helping us out on a lot of things, but it is also our day-to-day, and he'll be speaking to Oddball a little bit more in the end. But so what we're doing as far as the clean box goes is between every group using the pod, we've clean boxed all of our headsets between that. And then there are, like you saw, like the sanitation wipes that we have used previously in between individuals. And we've been a lot more hands off, just because safety of our staff and just, again, the kind of the world we're in. But this is just a little bit of a rundown of kind of some stuff that we've noticed. I mean, it's been slow at first, but we have seen growth week over week as far as our entertainment business goes, and so that's really nice. The people who want to come out and are going to leave their house, they're going to come out. I mean, there's a lot of people who maybe haven't left their house in 6 months. We're not going to kind of fight for that audience to come and try VR for the first time. We haven't had a lot of issues. I mean, we've seen more and more with people getting used to the general rules of public mask wearing, respecting people's spaces. So that's been nice. But, early on, we did a mandatory mask requirement before the governor put it in for the entire state. So again, kind of just keeping our employees safe and doing everything we can to be kind of thinking about that. Yeah, I mean, some of our larger events, like actually Matt was part of our ESC, which is our big extended reality art event back in the end of February.
Super
We sold
fun.
out we sold out like 200 tickets and had the place packed. Unfortunately, we don't know when the next one of those is going to happen, but we are looking at kind of more smaller focused groups where we can do, for our summer camp, we just had one kid per pod, right? They had their own space, they had their own HEC Vive, and I think that was a really good model because we were still able to fill up camps, and it felt super inclusive for the kids. So, and then yeah, another little plug is that we're excited for holiday season and hopefully can kind of pick up some of that that beer and pizza corporate event business. So if anybody is already getting the itch for a holiday party, you can always turn to your friends here at REM5. I had to add that in there.
Realistically, I mean, we're not expecting big corporate business till next year. Best case scenario, unfortunately. So, I mean, just
Small
with some
teams.
small teams. I mean, we're at probably 15% the volume right now on a weekly basis versus a year ago. But like Brian said, every week is ticking upwards, which is good. And then we're also just starting to book corporate training engagements again as companies are starting to look ahead on corporate training, and we're doing that in smaller groups, so groups of 50 or less versus back in January, February, we would work with in some cases hundreds of people in one day. Again, unfortunately, I don't think that that's going to happen in this calendar year for sure. And what early 2021 looks like, your guess is as good as mine.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, just a little kind of talk about how COVID has affected our world. But yeah, we are open for normal business, so we'd love to have any guys come out, bring the family and come check it out. But yeah, here's kind of the main focus of today's presentation is going to be about social WebXR, particularly using Mozilla hubs to build spaces like the one that we're in right now.
Can I ask a question quick before we move on?
Yeah, of course.
Can you guys go into the Cleanbox a little bit? Like the pricing of them, how long they take to do their thing?
Yeah, okay, yeah, good question. Sorry.
Gotcha.
How they do what they do.
Yeah, Guer actually has some good time spent with the Cleanbox, if you have any insight on that.
Yeah, I mean, so the point of the clean box is that it's able to clean things relatively rapidly. It spends 1 full minute on the cycle, so if you kind of include like hooking it in, putting the button and all of that, the whole process only takes about 2 minutes to go through a headset, which is one of the reasons we took it. There are other solutions for disinfecting where you can like allow disinfectant to sit on surfaces, or you can use like a handheld UVC wand sort of thing like you can buy online. But the issue with all of those solutions is that they just aren't scalable the way a Cleanbox is. So if I have a bunch of groups that are finishing up and people are rotating out, I can just go 1, 2, 3 down the line, and each cleaning only takes, like I said, 1.5, 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's pretty slick, and I think the price point was north of $1,200.
I think it was 1,400.
1,400, yeah.
Is that like the smallest one, or do they have options?
So they mostly have options for adding multiple clean boxes onto a single unit so that you can hook multiple headsets. So it's basically like a 2 or 4 headset unit where you'll hook them all up and then it's a single cycle, which might have made more sense if it weren't for the fact that all of our headsets are tied really separately from each other. So putting them all in at once doesn't really work.
Well, because they're tethered.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah,
Okay.
we've got a pretty slick setup where the Cleanbox is just on a rolling cart, and so
Yeah.
after every group, we can just roll it into that pod, plug it in, zap it, and move on. It's assuming it does what it says it does. It's been it's been a pretty nice addition. And of course, we will use it for the forever future, basically. So
What's the mechanism behind it? What is it? How's it doing the cleaning?
Yeah, so what it's doing is it's basically it's got a bunch of bulbs in the center that are emitting UVC light, and ultraviolet C type light is specifically at a frequency that bacteria and viruses tend to absorb in their DNA because it's not as shielded as us because we have big beefy cells. So they actually absorb all of the energy from the UVC spectrum and they denature. So it's covering them all in a set of light that's mostly just a light irritant to humans or most other organisms, but that microorganisms like bacteria and viruses just fall apart and die whenever they're exposed to it. So it's a really, really handy type of light for disinfection. It's used a lot for medical disinfecting, but it also can be adapted really well to very rapidly disinfect headsets.
mhm.
Very
Do
cool.
they
And
do
it
they
is-
have like a certain percentage they advertise or something like that of effectiveness or?
Yeah, so I think when we got the documentation from them, it was I think a 99.9%. I mean, these were trials that they had conducted themselves. I didn't read into it in a lot of detail, but that's the claim.
Okay. Cool.
And I was going to say, Oculus already mentioned it on stage a year ago at the last conference, well before COVID. So it's not, they're not showing up just out of opportunity. They were already on the market a year ago for all this stuff.
Yeah, we've some of the senior homes that we've worked with have inquired about it. Obviously, being uber sensitive. This was pre-COVID, and so we had already developed a relationship with Cleanbox in that regard. So yeah, they've been in the game for a while. And then I think when COVID hit, they sold out pretty quickly, and we're backed up to at least a couple months. I'm not sure if they're back in stock now. I'd have to look, but COVID definitely accelerated the timeline of adoption for them.
Cool. Thanks.
I was like, yeah, come visit us. Bring your headset. We'll zap it for you. We just make it into a vending machine. Throw a couple quarters in there and get a nice clean headset. Awesome. Well, any other questions then before we move on? Appreciate the questions about Cleanbox, and thanks, Square, for the super scientific rationale behind it. Love it.
Yeah, no problem. I geek out about this stuff, so.
That's why we love you. Awesome. Well, yeah, then let's hop into talking a little bit more about WebXR. So glad you guys were all able to hop in. Kind of some of just the general background is that we, again, basically by April, we're looking for other ways to kind of do outreach. Distance learning had already started to be kind of talking about, and this whole platform, as far as like no headset needed, you can just use a browser URL, like that checks a lot of boxes for us as far as not needing a download or needing to log in with anything. So we think it's pretty slick in that regard. Clearly, there are some trade-offs versus, an alt space or a few of the other ones that we looked at last week. But for kind of our clientele and for the most of the time, the easiest use case, we have really enjoyed kind of diving pretty deep into this specific platform. So it was kind of talking about, right, there's like this new normal. Everyone's been using Zoom and Skype for engagement. And really about maybe a month or two of your normal work meetings, those have gotten pretty terrible. It's not just strain on having to do another one of them, but physically looking into the camera is, and having to be like that kind of present is just can really drain you. So that's where we were that's why we were looking at like kind of what is that next stage for meetings. I mean, how many out here have had to do a lot of Zoom calls over the last couple of months, or have turned to Zoom if you hadn't been using Zoom as much? Tom, yeah. So, and that's a whole nother thing too, where it's like mic connection, video. I mean, you can run into quite a few problems. You have to have the right access codes. So again, we kind of like WebXR because like this space, it's open 24/7. You can come in and check this out any time of the day. You can bring your friends and whatever. So that was a nice piece of it. And also being able to do, private access codes and set up more personalized tours too. So yeah, and then just a little bit on that spectrum too. It's like, right, you get a lot more immersion and human connection in WebXR as an avatar with spatial audio than you do in a Zoom call. And just where it lies on that. Yeah, stand up daily in Zoom. That sounds like a nightmare. And so yeah, really exploring WebXR of like how does it fit on this spectrum, especially where putting a bunch of people in headsets might not be possible for the next foreseeable future, right? So yeah, it's been really nice. No hardware, no apps. For some of the projects that we're going to show you, it's been pretty cool. Amir, any more nuggets that I'm missing on that front?
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, we're looking for social interaction and content delivery. And I guess the one caveat to this slide as I'm looking at it now is when we talk WebXR and where Brian and I and the rest of the team are using it primarily is on desktop and not in VR. So you might be looking at this chart and saying, well, we're in VR and WebXR. Our primary market is folks that don't have headsets or access to headsets, and we're accessing the platform via desktop.
And this is just kind of another look at that spectrum of where WebXR really checks a lot of boxes compared to in using my air quotes with my one hand. Zoom, again, it's a creative way to use content delivery. Did this space over Zoom like we did early in the pandemic. We made our innovation labs for kind of our child programming, kind of our education series that we've been doing in our venue in St. Louis Park. We moved those to online, and we were using Zoom, but we were tying in some cool AR and some stuff that kids could do at home. But then it's like, all right, well, let's just build a space where kids can use it like a video game and learn all about the technology in their own time in a format that they're familiar with. And so kind of that be like a fun way to learn is really nice little tie-in for all of this. And then, yeah, getting that customization, being able to build out spaces like this from literal scratch. And I know it's like there's a lot of much more technical people in the room. Bear with us. We found WebXR really nice because it does have we spent a lot of hours in it, a pretty easy back end to like, all right, we're going to lay out a floor plan, like and we kind of do a similar, design process. So like, all right, what do we want the space to look like? And then we go in there and we iterate and we pass it back and forth and we kind of, come to a spot where it's like, all right, that seems to work for the goal that we have in place. So as far as, not needing to build 3D models from scratch, although we did custom 3D models that we built into this space. Just as far as going from nothing to a workable concept, this has been more so. Yeah, I mean, right. So if you look around the room, and we'll get to that, of course, a little bit later when we all do a little bit of exploring, but it is just a really nice way to deliver content. We're doing a presentation right now, but on the walls, there's video assets, there's GIFs, there's imagery, we're inside of a 360 sphere that was built by one of our artists in Tilt Brush. So that's been really nice too, as far as like, okay, again, what are those goals of what we want to get across and what are the assets that's going to be the best way to do that? This museum space, for example, or an exhibition type space lends itself really just a slam dunk to this platform in particular. Assets, and we'll talk all about this in a couple of the examples coming up too, to showcase those a little bit more. So yeah, just like kind of our REM5 for Good space, a lot of what we're doing, again, with education and seniors and in the arts actions tie in directly to being used with this platform. That accessibility of just being able to come in on a web browser. So right, museums, art exhibitions, concerts. We're exploring all of those spaces either previously or in the next couple months, actually. And then, yeah, really just like how can you work with brands? You know, customize a space, get some sponsorship, do this presentation, smaller, more intimate experiences where it's like a Zoom call or a Facebook Live, for example. Oh, there's insert popular pop star that I can't reference. There's Taylor Swift giving a live concert on Facebook, and a million people are watching. Right? That's cool, but it doesn't feel intimate. This room, you know, I think I met most of you in the real world, but I'm like, oh, hey, cool. That's, you know, there's Marty, there's Matt, there's Ryan. Like, if we do meet up in the real world, like, I feel like we already have this sense of connection, and we had kind of a, you know, there was already a smaller group thing that we did. So that was that's kind of a really cool part of it too, that we're working for in a lot of these use cases of just like these up close experiences with, like, oh, that's not just Matt on the video stream, like that's Matt right there standing in front of me. So ties into a lot of live events. So Amir and I have been working through a lot of like, right, how do you live stream content into the space? How do you do some kind of asymmetric activation? So we had a meetup last week where kind of an exhibition style where, right, you get to learn about information and you get to take in content kind of in your own as you know, kind of make your way through the space. And then we had a live stream coming in that was connected to an application called Meet.ps, which is basically live crowd polling for live events. So they were able to answer questions and then see them appear on the board in the space in real time, which is pretty cool. You
That's
know,
awesome.
again, for a lot of those people that are on desktop and they have their phone right there anyways, like, hey, we'd love to make you feel more connected to the experience, that you're giving live feedback, in addition to having those conversations that you're having in the space anyways. So, and then the other side of it is that 24/7 open access. So one of the pieces that we'll show is a recreation of Gamut Gallery, which is an art gallery in downtown Minneapolis. You know, she can only hold so many gallery hours, or they were boarded up for most of the beginning of June, and actually had some of their windows broken out. So it's like, can go on, the sales can go on because you have this virtual space that lives. It doesn't matter what part of the globe you're in, you can just join. So, you know, similar to a lot of the other activations, but we kind of like it where you can build a space and then like, people can just kind of come in on their own accord, which is pretty nice. And then, yeah, I mean, that's kind of something that, you know, as far as talking with everyone in this room here, that's a little bit of our go-to-market over the next couple weeks and months here, is talking about how kind of we, you know, in addition to our entertainment business and our For Good business, this is kind of our WebXR stuff that ties into a lot of that, is that we can help, you know, with building a space. We're also working with a couple 3D modelers that are or have been in this group to kind of help, you know, get some design on the back end that we can just load in kind of a pre-built space. We're getting a little bit smarter in our build out of these from the beginning times. And really, we like to provide value in that, like, we have spent a lot of time with the program, as much time as you can in the last couple months, and then help virtual event that is more than just, all right, everybody join the Zoom call, everybody join the live stream. So working on being basically a virtual concierge, helping people through the experience, like, you know, because for our clients especially, how are the controls? Can you hear me? And like, you really have to be pretty straightforward to people so that they can get the best out of the experience. And that's also gone into a lot of our onboarding videos and information, as well as like the general population up for success for when they enter a space like this that might be completely out of anything they've done before, which what a lot of the population has done before. So just maintenance and consulting. We host all of our spaces on a dedicated Amazon server on the back end, so we kind of offer that as just stability and capability, and then just that ongoing support. So say you have a space that's open, we can go in and we can do a refresh. We can change things up so that the space, kind of like our physical space, can have a lot of different ways that it's being utilized. So it's kind of what we're hoping to work with people in the next couple months. Just a couple of the projects that we wanted to highlight too. So this first one that we'll talk about is Simulacra. So that was kind of a digital art gallery that we opened back in the end of May. Of course, what we're in right now, that was basically still more of a educational museum, multi-purpose space. Two realities, which is a new space that Amir has been working on that actually looks at the inequality of the city of Minneapolis. So the back of that is that Minnesota gets all these high accolades for being such a great place, but that's basically only if you're white. So it's a really cool, immersive way to learn about racial inequality, and that's something that he's been rolling out to a lot of different partners, and we're going to actually that in some way this next week. So it's the first kind of one of its kind in the world. So that's
congratulations.
Kind of cool for us. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we'd love to have you. We'll try to do something to have people check it out. But we're that's kind of this in that more of that corporate training space where you can hey, Target's like, cool, we want to send 1,000 of our execs through that type of space. That's kind of one of the pathways that we're looking at to use something like this. So Simulacra, and this is another one that you guys can pop into just from our REM5 for Good page. It's always open. Basically, it was this digital art space that we wanted to create since we had just come off of a really good art event. And it seemed, it was kind of that first step into it of like, what makes a ton of sense? A crazy, weird art gallery. All right, done. Like, let's start on that. Definitely a learning, bit of a curve for Amir and I and the rest of the team that was working on it, that kind of starting from, 0 to get to 100 real fast. So basically Amir built like the structure. It's got this very like brutalist architecture to it. I asked him if he was like going through a phase or something, but I mean, I love it. It looks great, but
it was a phase, Brian.
Yeah, maybe it was a phase. And then basically I curated about 13 local artists to put work in there, ranging from 3D models that they'd worked on to photogrammetry to a lot of traditional art that we've just now put in a virtual space, which is kind of a cool crossover again for the 99% of artists that don't use VR. Yeah, so this was kind of just a fun project. Here's a couple more screenshots from the inside. Left one is actually the artist standing next to their physical art piece, now in a WebXR virtual gallery. So it got pretty meta pretty quick, but we're all about that here basically. Just like a time-lapse video of our opening event, so you can kind of see, we got pretty good traffic. I think we had 50 or 60 people, in over the course of 2 hours. And actually, what was really behind this is that we posted it to Twitter, and one of this a WebXR group out in California got word of it, and he's like, hey, can we host our meeting tonight in your space? And we're like, sure, why not? So kind of like it'd be our group just like bombing into someone else's space, but because then we got to have a lot of more conversations with kind of people out there that had worked in WebXR for a couple months earlier, and just it was just I guess so. That was just a brief look at that, but it was interesting for us because we had, that was kind of our first WebXR event. We had kind of no idea how it was going to go, but we'd done a couple artist meetups in the space previously, so you start to learn how people function in virtual space, and I'm sure, as you guys have seen in alt space and a few other the other metaverses, people stand around in circles and chat like they would in the physical world, and a lot of things and just little of the real world pass over into here, and so that's always just kind of to see and learn, and kind of, our big thing is like, right, how do we figure out human behavior so that we can apply it to our spaces and to onboarding and to how people are going to use it. So we have luckily spent a lot of time figuring that out. This next space is what we're in right now. This is the Xr Continuum, and really the was built is that when we were doing our virtual programming for kids, adults, kind of whoever wanted to join in, we spent about 10 plus minutes doing a VR, talking about 3 and 6 degrees of freedom, not too in depth, but just enough to get people a little bit more comfortable with what we're talking about. You have a week, they've heard it, been there, done that. So this space was like, all right, how do we take those first 10, 15 minutes and make it a whole new way to engage in that content? So as you guys will see as you explore, it's not an extensive look at it, but we think it's a pretty good overview of the last 150 years from stereoscopes to valve index, basically. So and right, it's a fun way to peek around and to read at your own pace and to kind of take in the content in a new way. So here's just a couple looks at, we've had our new media group meet up in here. We each of every single one of our camps of kids would all get in the 12 headsets at our St. Louis Park space and join in at the same time, and we'd give tours inside of it. So this space has been just really cool as really a multi-use space. And then it was like, all right, let's host a group of people interested in VR inside of an Xr Continuum at the same time. So and on the bottom is a high five of the kids. Watching that footage of how they interact, there's a lot of, you go up and you slap people's faces of their robots, so that was slightly disturbing to see, but for the most part, kids have a ton of fun, and they're all talking to each other, and they're talking about their avatars, and like we've seen with younger audiences across all the things we do, they pick it up in literally a fraction of a second. So which is good, but then can be scary at times, because then they'll go in and do stuff with their avatars, or they'll go be running around and stuff. So it's not too different, again, from children of the real world. And then just kind of this last project I wanted to put in here, because we just finished, actually I just finished up the recap video earlier today on it. So basically it was August 7th and 8th, we did an in real life event at Gamut Gallery. So I mentioned them earlier. If you guys have been to their space, like I said, they're just kind of in like southeast downtown. They've got a really cool gallery space and this courtyard in the back. And I've known kind of some of the people who work there, and we wanted to team up to do something, because we're like, hey, art space is kind of again a home run, so let's use Gamut as kind of this testing grounds for recreating a physical location in WebXR, because especially for them, a lot of people are really tied to that building. Like Gamut Gallery is people, it's art, it's events, but it really is that space as well, and I think that makes sense for a lot of businesses or even homes or places you visited. So so what we did was, at first it was going to be like, hey, let's in WebXR put art on the walls and people can visit it. And then the next step was, hey, let's do all of that, and then let's put people in Oculus Quests and have them freely roam an empty physical gallery, only seeing art inside of the headset. Way out there thoughts, because as far as like, right, we've been working with WebXR for a couple months. We've seen how it works on Quest. Decided that if you take the Guardians off on the Quest and you make the room scale 1-to-1 to the space, you just let people go and they figure it out themselves. cool project, especially for kind of the level of tech that all came together to be a part of it. We're not really sure that anyone quite has used that pipeline on the planet before. Let's see. I think I should have the hype video next. If you don't hear the music, just hum something in your head because it's got a banging track for it. So hit autoplay. Let me. Is all part of the experience.
That side-by-side view is pretty cool.
That has like a lot of impact, especially for people who, you try to explain this to.
Yeah.
Venus
Yeah,
flytrap.
nice footage capture. Yeah.
Did you really sync it up so that the people that were in it at the same time were actually like, in relation to one another? could they tell where the other people were? I guess is the question.
Yeah, could they avoid collisions?
Brian, could you hear that question?
The music is so loud for me. I wish I could give some of it to everyone else.
Yeah, Brian, they were asking if the individuals in the space were, I guess, did their virtual position match their real position?
Yeah, so it's pretty good. And yeah, here's kind of like a pause on that side by side, which again we think is like a really effective showing of it. So what we did is we had 4 headsets at a time, mostly for, I mean, it's a WebXR way of doing co-localized multiplayer. So we had 4 people in headsets at the same time. Yes, exactly. And basically what we did is that their spawn point was all in the same place in the physical gallery that matched up to the virtual gallery. And so we would all kind of, make sure the headsets are correct. And that was a lot of back and forth of resizing the room. Because like we went off of a blueprint at first, so it was scale exact. But once we got in the headset, I don't know if it was quite the field of view or what was really making it. We had to bring in the sidewalls quite a bit. I mean, it's kind of whatever works. Like, it doesn't really matter if it's there or not. The fact that it lined up well enough to trick people into being able to freely roam, basically blindfolded, was a success. As far as bumping into walls, we did most of that in testing. So, and a lot of people were kind of concerned about that at first, but we saw that it was a really quick acceptance of this pretend world that we'd put them in, mostly because, before they put the headset on, they're looking out into the gallery, so they've seen the physical world, and then when they put it on, it matches up enough that they're like, oh, okay, that's convincing, like, let's go with it. And then, as far as the avatar locations, like, they were close, and that's where people would always go, and they'd come over here and be like, oh, like, are you there? And so basically having them only work off of all being in the same WebXR instance, not having shared guardian or lighthouses or really anything that's telling them where they are in space, like, again, a poor man's work around it, it was pretty convincing and pretty slick. So we basically sold out 2 nights of time slots. We gave people 30 minutes, which really was a lot of onboarding, making sure they had their REM5 waiver filled out, because we just, wanted to cover, thanks, Marty. We wanted to cover ourselves on that front. And then, we put them in the headset. There was a range of how long people would stay in there. And I think we learned that dwell time doesn't have to be a ton. And I think what we're going to do is add in a lot more language on the artist and stuff to read that we kind of feared wasn't going to be, legible or at the scale that we wanted it, or it was going to look goofy. But I think that would help people kind of, go around and examine stuff a little bit more. But, for the most part, I think it just worked really well, and people loved it. We've got a ton of content too on our For Good page that I can share out that has really good reactions, and hearing back again from the general public who, what's called 75% of the people that came through hadn't been in a headset before, let alone this really swanky co-location art multiplayer experience. So yeah, it was cool. And kind of what we're doing is we're going to do a closing event September 19th and 20th. We're going to nail down. Yeah. Well, like Matt says, it's a poor man's headset AR experience. Exactly. Like, we didn't really know fully what to call this because, like, right, you put a headset on at REM5, you're in a VR experience of Gamut. You put that same headset on in Gamut, you're kind of in an AR XR hybrid thing. So not only is it weird to find words in like side of a VR community of what this is, but trying to tell the general public what they're going to experience was a whole nother thing. So a lot of people came in on trust of like, I think this is going to be cool, and then it came through. So that was a success on our part. And right, showing kind of our 2-world testing where I basically strapped a GoPro on top of a Quest and walked through, the world at the same time. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. Like, everything kind of matches up. And then, yeah, getting other people in the space was just a really cool add-on. And then I would bring another bot into the space just to record footage and have a webcam sitting in the exact same spot to get that same co-location. So we have about 60 gigs of content on this project. Ryan asks, if you're replicating an art gallery in VR, how long before people you them start experiencing with non-realistic or otherworldly shapes? Okay, I think I read most of that before it disappeared in front of my eyes. So I think this is a good question, a good example of like, right, we recreated a physical space with very traditional art from traditional artists now as 3D objects in a VR space. The one thing that we did that there might be a better picture of if I flip the slide, well, here's just some people in there, was that we hung one of the pieces of art floating in the middle of the space. So kind of the original brief was like, all right, let's make a Gamut gallery, but then we wanted to do at least one thing that was like hyper realistic, not physically possible, just because why not? And I think if that was the rest of the question was like, yes, we would love to push this into a much more bizarre and kind of reality bending world where, yeah, you're using really cool 3D models in space. I mean, as long as you have, an empty gallery, it's like you can pull it off, and WebXR is a really slick tool to do that with, at least as far as our time and skills are concerned. So yeah, just a couple other pictures of people in the space. Yeah, it does.
And Ryan, we played around with a lot of the non-reality options in Simulacra, but we ran into some issues on just file sizes with 3D models and really bogging down WebXR. So if you go and try to log into Simulacra on a Quest, it'll basically just start on fire because of all the goofy assets we have in there. So it's kind of the trade-off.
Yeah, you can imagine like a multi-million-dollar sculpture, yeah, inside of a Walker exhibit now can be viewed from your living room, or can be viewed at their space in an empty room, and you just walk around something that doesn't exist there, right? So similar things that you could do, yeah, with AR on your phones, but we think that the kind of the social avatar-y tie-in of WebXR was a really nice touch, especially for this. And then that picture in the top right is actually like one of Gamut's most loyal fans. He doesn't have vision in one of his eyes, and so we were really excited for him to try this out and see, like, right, how does the stereo work with really only one good eye? And as you saw in the video too, we actually gave him like a rolly chair tour of the space, which is just like really cool to see, actually, just because we didn't want him to, bump into anything or fall just because of previous injuries. So, he was still able to pick up a lot of texture. All of the art that was photographed and then extruded into a 3D object, like, looks super crisp. Which maybe that's surprising to us, but it was just nice to see that didn't lose the details of the brush strokes. Some of the objects that felt 3D were 3D reaction video, but if I'm the only one hearing music, I probably will just skip that. But I put them all up on YouTube. So yeah, if you're interested in kind of what the general population thought of it, they're pretty cool, and they give us some kudos. So. And then basically what we did was, all right, so we have a gallery space set up that we have executed this XR, AR, triple R event, whatever you want to call it, in. And then the next thing was like, all right, cool. How do we build this out and make the space a little bit bigger to host, 30 people who want to come just visit on the internet, right? Like we're doing today. And so we have a second version of the space that has more signage about the artists. It actually has an extended courtyard that I was able to build out and curate with some more, I don't know, trippy art, I guess I would call it. But so that was kind of fun. And then we hosted a party, right? So it's like multi-use situations for this one project. And now Cassie, who's the curator there, has been hosting meetups. We have the actual artist, like in this bottom left one, Aaron is standing by his piece, and showing someone his work who lived in Texas. So I think that's just another just really cool use case for it, as far as who can't physically get to a space or doesn't want to physically go to a space. So this is another video that I will save us for, but it's kind of a recap of the WebXR meetup. Come out. It was a fun crowd, and again, it's always cool to see kind of rolls out. I think the big thing too is that people still into this world of going to online events, and then for the vast majority of people that haven't done a WebXR type experience before, so I think we're gaining a lot of traction, and as we host more and more stuff and do stuff more regularly, that will just continue to grow. Yeah, so I kind of covered a few of these things, but just like kind of what we learned from doing this type of pretty, I don't know, I guess I think it's kind of a cutting edge pipeline of tech. It's very hard to explain it to the general public because you can't, our hype words and stuff. So showing it was very important. Second bullet right there. Look at me just alley-ooping myself right here. The side-by-side is really nice, and I think, Matt, you commented that, yeah, that explains it. Like, you see that and you get it. We do want to add more details and kind of look into how can we get people to dwell a little bit longer. I mean, we're fine if you want to come check it out for a bit and then pop back out. Like, clearly, like, that's completely okay with any VR experience. But it's always interesting of like, what would make people, do they feel comfortable enough in the headset? Do they want to look at stuff more? I mean, it's just kind of questions that we're constantly experimenting with and finding new answers for. Yeah, the learning curve is low. Once people see the physical space and hop in, they start to walk. They'll put their hand out to feel for a wall. If it's slightly off, they'll get that. But like you saw in the video, we had anyone from maybe 12 to try it out. So a pretty good range of users to at least test on. And then, yeah, just kind of some skewed dimensions in WebXR to really have to play with it from like, okay, I'm in the physical space, pop in a headset, go over and touch a wall. Is it in the right place? Go over and touch the wall. So, iterations, but that's just kind of what we're doing. And then, yeah, we're going to have a closing event. So kind of keep an eye out for REM5 for good stuff. And we'd love to have anyone come out and check it out because it's hopefully at least interesting and leads to some more thoughts
Do a couple
Yeah.
questions on that before we move on?
Definitely do some questions. And then I've just got a couple spaces that I can show too that are WebXR, and then we're gonna, I think, be to the oddball section. So any technical human nature questions on?
Well, I've got two. Since that was Quest based, did you guys have to work on frame rate and performance?
No, the quests have been pretty good. I'm not sure if Amir's still in his quest or what you guys are running, but I think we were getting, we're traditionally getting low to mid 50s. In the Vive Pros, when we do WebXR at our space, we'll get 60 plus. We've had some crazy computers that at least pretend to say that they're getting triple digits. So Quest was fine. No one was having any issues. I mean, like, right, if it was put anyone in it at all, and we would have probably just had to scrap the project. But yeah, it was pretty smooth, and we somehow didn't really run into any catastrophic problems. Like, we took a break during the first night for like an hour to kind of recharge, and that actually was what threw us off more so than just running the quests for 3 straight hours and plugging them in intermittently. Because basically we open up the room on the quest, and that's the end of it. It's always on. We don't want it to go to sleep. We don't want it to, I mean, right? It's just you pop it off, you do a wipe down, and then you get it ready for the next guest. Was basically the flow for that. So
Another question was the same way that Matt was reacting to your side-by-side video. You tried to get this out externally to get some press for REM5, because it's really kind of a intuitive aha visual thing that I think a lot of people could understand.
we think that about a lot of the fun stuff that we're doing over here, and we are going to be doing a big media push basically this coming week, because I cut that include artist reactions, general public reactions, the hype video, the WebXR stuff. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of good content to get out there, and we're going to do a press release, and we've got some additional help for that, which will be really nice.
Good.
It's something pretty novel and exciting that yeah, even someone who doesn't know VR could see that side by side and go, holy smokes, like that's intriguing, at least, right? That's all we can ask for people. So
and then
yeah, I think if we can get in touch with a few contacts, we'd love to do like a media focused night where we really put some people in there, because like, and they love putting people in VR headset, if not for getting some goofy laughs and them walking around trying to feel the walls. Like, that's funny. That makes for great TV. Like, no one's gonna, so yeah, we would love to. If anyone has any good connections, like, we will do whatever we need to give them a run through and meet up whenever to do that. So,
and I think your other story, if you got a good visual of it, someone presenting their artwork to somebody in Texas that's virtually attending, I think that could be a nice visual piece too, and it ties into the COVID stuff pretty well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of better write up that I didn't go into that write the, it's a little bit more kind of on the art speak, but it does tie in really nicely, where it's like, okay, the gallery was emptied due to the civil unrest because they, to break in and had to board up the place. And so this was kind of like birth of what an art gallery looks like. And yeah, so it was not only just local kind of the, Minneapolis and now growing things that were going on, but yes, COVID, small group, using new tech to socialize in ways that we can. That's kind of the WebXR part of it too. So yeah, I mean, we think it's a home run in a lot of different ways that you can tell that story. So I think that's succinct and really focused, for, get someone interested in, oh wow, like, what did you guys do out here? And then it's like, all right, like, we can tell you, and we can kind of talk to you about how it really ties in. But an art show with no art, right? Like, there's your hook. So
yeah.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments, concerns? We're almost there. Just want to show a couple more pieces of WebXR, and then have Guer come up and just talk a little bit about Oddball, which tie-in extension to what we did at Gamut Gallery, but in its own new way. So this is just one other screen grab of Amir's space, One City, Two Realities. We'll get in touch, with everyone as that rolls out. It probably won't be public facing for a little bit now, but its goal is to eventually live, as a pretty impactful type of experience that can really keep those conversations going. And being in Minneapolis, that just makes a lot of sense as well. So, and then this is just a quick aerial view of kind of an early rendering of a classroom space that we've been working on. It's really cool because, yeah, you can have it hanging over the cliff, the cliff edge of the Grand Canyon. So what kid's not going to like run up to the windows and like peer out to like their imminent death? Don't know if you're going to talk about this later, but I'm very curious about associated costs. Oh, yeah, of course. Actually, yeah, just after the slide, we can talk a little bit more about that. But yeah, as a learning space, it's kind of got that auditorium. We had some kids in here from Academy of Whole Learning, and we showed them some Minecraft stuff on the video, and then we brought a 3D Minecraft character into the space, and like that was pretty cool because they all recognize those objects, and like you can use it as a really multifaceted kind of learning tool. And then each of those wings, like we kind of saw with the audio drop off for spatial audio, you can go off into green wing and have a quiet group conversation, and then everybody comes back and meets in the middle. So kind of working through logistics of a virtual space that would very much reflect a physical space type of build out. So cool. So before we talk into arena scale, Marty had a question about some of the associated costs, especially with the Amazon server. Amir, do you want to take that one by chance, or any of the other back end thoughts in general?
Yeah, on cost, to be frank, I can't even remember which level of server we have running right now. I haven't looked at it in about 2 months, but it's fairly nominal cost. I think then it's based on usage. So we have it set up so when you ping virtual REM5, and you're the first person that's done it for the day, it'll take 5 seconds or 10 seconds because it'll fire up the server. So we're saving some money there because it's not actually sitting idle most of the time. But with our current usage, which we're doing events on a weekly basis, but nothing too major, our bills are still in the probably $50 to $100 range based on usage. For our first big event in Simulacra, where we had a pretty big file size, and we had 3 instances going at the same time full of people, we upgraded the server for that night, which added a little bit to the cost, but at the end of the day, it's really not that much based on our current usage, which frankly is quite a bit. As we begin working with schools and move into the fall, where we have several classes going on all day, every day in there, I expect it to go up quite a bit, but I mean, we're still talking, in the hundreds of dollars, not even thousands of dollars, if that helps.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely accessible in a lot of ways. We haven't found, the biggest barrier to entry is just kind of learning how to build and file types and what's going to work. And we've spent too many hours to talk about in the last couple months on that. But hey, we kind of see this as having some real staying power. So awesome. Well, let's just hop into the last piece real quick here that we'll talk about, which is the arena scale activations that we're doing over here at our St. Louis Park facility. Basically, we have a space called the Quad, which is 4 pods, so 4 HTC Vive room scale setups. And then we empty out that space to do 4-person one-on-one, one-on-one-on-one, 2-on-2 type multiplayer games with Oddball. Actually, Guer, if you want to just swing on up, I'll probably pass it over to you here in a little bit. And so Guer's been kind of our master and commander of getting customers into headsets, getting the space calibrated, and a few other pieces that we continue to kind of streamline as we go. And I think I might have just a little video coming up here that shows kind of people doing it. So then I'll speak a little bit to that afterwards. So yeah, that's the next slide. our experience right now is called Oddball. And Guer, do you want to just explain like what you kind of how you describe Oddball?
Yeah, I mean, so at the end of the day, it's basically just VR laser tag. The whole idea is that the virtual space is mapped one to one with the space that people are moving around in, hence it being an arena scale space. But you know, it adds walls and obstacles, spaces to move around in, power ups to grab. But so people are engaging with the space, kind of like what you saw with Gamut, on this one to one basis, but an altered version of it where they're moving around, running around, shooting at each other, and all that. The one nice thing about Oddball in particular is that it's actually the space, the arena in virtual reality is 3 separate zones that are separated by little teleporters. So it's one to one with the physical space, except that you get a sense of bigger dimensions and you can actually snipe people out. And there's just a little bit more depth to the space as opposed to it just being a room with walls in it, which is one of the reasons that we went with Oddball over some other experiences where you really felt the limitation of being in this single large room as opposed to something that feels a little bit more expansive. The game itself has been like successful in that it's been pretty straightforward for people to get into. I mean, and we can talk more about like the calibration and how the room setup goes and kind of some of those different options. But if we've got that video of the gameplay, I say we can roll that.
So the video will just show staff gameplay to kids at camp, just kind of a couple different range. And what you'll see with Oddball is that it's really well set up because basically a whole family can do it. You know, it's fun enough for adults, but still kind of an appropriate, more cartoon. I use air quotes again, like cartoon violence of like of a shooter type game. So I thought that was a really smart play for them as far as like of it and the level of entertainment. So.
Did we lose his audio?
Yeah, none of the videos have had audio.
I'm having a great time.
Oh, I get it. Sorry to bother you.
I haven't been able to see any video for like half an hour. Trying to go in and out.
So yeah, actually, Guer made a couple cameos. Yes, there's a royalty-free banger in there for sure. Yeah, Guer made a couple cameos in that last video, and you saw a couple, shots of actual gameplay, and that's what that top image is up here. Basically, yeah, you're these fun kind of cartoon animal colored teams, and you get cool upgrades. There's a thing called the fart bomb, which of course is just like funny for really anyone. And it's got this cool explosion to it, and yeah, I don't know. It's been pretty cool so far, and I think we've had quite a few people come in and try it, and I'll talk to Amir, but I think like right if any of you wanted to bring in family or come in with friends, like we'd love to do some kind of discount just for everybody who's in the meeting here tonight, because we'd love to have you come try it out. It is pretty interesting and very unique, and I think you guys would love to try to like debug it and look peer behind the curtain a little bit. But
yeah,
yeah, Guer, I guess talk through just like how you set up a normal game and what players kind of have to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I did notice in the chat as we were watching was somebody commenting on the distance of the players from each other in game. And this goes back to something I mentioned earlier or tried to mention earlier with the design of the space, which again I think was really clever on their part. The actual arena in the universe, in the virtual space, is 3 separate zones that are like maybe 50 yards apart each. There's this big gap between them, but when you walk through doorways, you teleport into that next section. So when you're in one part of the arena, you're sniping down on someone in another section of it, but then you can also quickly run across there to jump in and try to get some more close action. And this just adds a sort of like a depth and a size to the space where it's still taking advantage of that one-to-one spatial sense of it, where you're actually moving around, But at the same time, you still get to like shoot at people at different ranges. You can scout where people are by walking up to the balconies and kind of looking for the other people. And other little details like that. Yeah, glad I could answer the question. It's really weird to explain, like a lot of virtual experiences, where you kind of have to step in there and walk through those teleporters a couple times, which those teleporters do occasionally result in people like banging their foreheads together. But thankfully, everything's worked pretty well so far. So
Yeah, I
setting
think.
up, yeah.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, I think we've gotten pretty lucky with the initial thought of like, oh man, kids are just going to go sprinting and there's going to be collisions, and luckily that, yeah, the calibration and the spatial awareness of the other avatars like is pretty good, and with the teleports and how they have you kind of walk around each other, like we haven't had any incidences yet, so that's been really nice so far. So,
And I think
and
part
then
of
yeah,
it is that.
just a just
no,
another plug
finish
that
up.
if you go to the REM5 VR page on YouTube, there's a bunch of in-game videos that I've cut that also shows a little bit more of like what the gameplay looks like. So definitely check those out to really get a sense of the 6-minute rounds that people play in.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that it comes down to with the spatial sense is that when you put people in a world that has that one-to-one scaling and you just tell them, hey, you're in a laser tag arena, all of their actual physical spatial instincts kick in and they try to move slowly and safely. They don't want to crash into the virtual walls. They're moving in a careful fashion. Whereas if you put them in a room scale setup in a Vive and you put them in super hot where they forget that the real world exists, suddenly they forget about all the limitations and they're trying to run into the walls. So in a lot of ways, I think the arena scale, for all that it puts a bunch of people with what look like blindfolds on and shove them into a room together with guns, that sounds terrible, but it winds up being way safer than a lot of our other experiences in terms of how people act. In fact, one of the initial biggest problems that we had setting up the space was obviously getting the tracking to work and also setting up some kind of guardian boundary. You might have seen in the footage, we've got a lot of tape in the quad right now. We have put a lot of additional markings just to try and add landmarks to the space to help the quests track in the larger space. And trying to find stable ways to set up an arena scale guardian is really difficult. Actually drawing out that boundary large enough so that it is there and that people can see it, but then also so that it doesn't just disappear 5 seconds later as soon as the headset resets or as soon as the lighting changes slightly. But actually, in the last few times that people have come in, we've had an increasing number of guests who we've ended up turning the Guardian off for, and this has been really surprisingly successful. You put people in and say, hey, the virtual world wall is an actual wall, and then they treat it like a wall, and everyone moves safely, and they treat it like the space that it is. And again, this is just one of those things that arena scale really benefits from. And as we move forward with other larger scale experiences, basically, as long as the quest can track and the space is set up intelligently, you don't have to rely on a lot of those arbitrary barriers and safety features because people just treat it the way they need to play safely in a physical space, which has been really cool to see. Tracking and keeping people in the right spots is still definitely an issue. One of the reasons we chose Oddball is that it has a very simple setup in terms of calibration, getting every person's headset to treat the room the same way. It's literally just a matter of you hold down the Y button, the controller buzzes, and then you use the X button to tap an A point and a B point, and boom, the room just pops up and you've set the width. It puts all the other dimensions in. Calibration takes 5 seconds if you know what you're doing, which is really good because we have to do it about half a dozen times for a single reservation. Sometimes we end up having to add time, but the nice thing is it's a pretty quick process compared to other experiences that have had to massively reset calibration. And it's just this huge ordeal of completely redoing everything just to be able to restart the match if something goes wrong. Because the reality is just that this amount of space and 4 headsets in the space with each other just starts to run up into the physical limitations of the Oculus. The Quest really doesn't want things getting added to the space after it decides what everything looks like and where people are. And 4 people walking around, getting up in each other's faces, pushing themselves away from each other. You know, you have brothers and friends who, like, you know, jump in 1 foot away from somebody to try and get that melee range shot in, and immediately the headsets get confused and they switch places and just like stuff goes awry. And kind of seeing how that happens and working on making that happen less is something that we're still working with the team on. I think there's a bullet in here. Yeah. So the team that develops this is based in New Zealand. We're in pretty regular communication with them. We're providing a lot of feedback. We're having some calls with them and stuff. But obviously, the 14-hour time difference makes it pretty difficult to communicate. And there have been some like late night 9-10 p.m. setup and troubleshooting meetings where we've gotten in with them online and tried to talk through stuff. But overall, it's been a really fun experience. And frankly, a lot less has gone wrong than I was afraid of when we first decided to launch on Arena Scale. Overall, things have gone smoothly. People have been able to recalibrate when they've needed to. Setting up the space has worked really well. And no children have run face first into the brick walls. So things are great.
Yeah, and I think what else is cool too is that outside of the New Zealand company, I think has a physical space that they run this. We're the only place on the planet also running this experience. 2-Bit Circus in LA was past tense. I think they're having some more struggles in general with reopening due to COVID, which is too bad because their space is actually pretty dang cool. It's a pretty fun time out there. But so I mean that's kind of a another cool thing that's like, hey, if we can bring in some of that first on the planet type experiences, that's never a bad thing. And so, you know, still doing it with social distancing and masks on and clean boxing the quests and all that good stuff too. So yeah, I think we think that Arena Scale is pretty nifty. There's a couple other experiences that we've tried, and if you came to our beta night, you might have tried the other kind of more traditional laser tag type one. But there's more and more stuff coming out all the time, and as you all know, just development for Quest in general is kind of had quite a bit of focus. So we'll keep an eye out as far as entertainment stuff goes for what we can be doing, and yeah, especially in the realm of the Quest world. So awesome.
I'm trying to remember your guys' physical space. Do you have really tall ceilings? Or
Yes.
are they 8 feet?
Yeah, we probably got what 13, 14 feet up to a steel kind of cross beam area. So
one of the things they did at the Oculus Arena Scale was put unique things on the ceiling because nobody can include them.
Oh, nice.
That makes a lot of sense. It would probably be possible to hang something from up there or to like get something that's at like head height-ish.
Yeah, it can't wiggle. It's got to be real contrasty. All those tricks. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Interesting. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Guer, for joining us. Really appreciate it. And thank everyone for also coming on in. Thanks, Zach, and the MNVR team for having us out. We're glad you guys could come check out the Continuum and our presentation. Yeah, stay in touch. I mean, like I said, we're doing a lot of stuff on the entertainment and the For Good side. So if you're not on our mailing list, that's where you kind of can get most of the information about the stuff we're doing every single week. And yeah, we'd love to have you come out. We'd love to partner on WebXR projects or, you know, leads and solutions that you all might have kind of in your own spaces. And thanks a bunch. I know we got started a little bit late and I talked too much and it's time to drink a LaCroix, but really appreciate the time, and thanks Amir for helping tag team with me. And yeah, feel free to socialize and enjoy the space. Yes, loud. I can hear the applause from St. Louis Park. That's great.